part of Women's Month, we bring you South Africa's influential women. This time we have a trailblazer in the financial industry, Raeesa Gabriel. She's the co-founder of financial wellness and salary-linked benefit platform, Level Finance. For more on her mission to deliver financial wellness, she joins us from here in Johannesburg. Raeesa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. It is Women's Month when we are able to put a spotlight on this kind of thing. But we've heard time and time again, even outside of Women's Month, about the need for more women representation in your sector. You had been in the business for almost 20 years, I think, before you decided to start Level Finance. Can you give us an idea of what your time was like working your way up that so-called ladder before deciding that this is the gap that you see and this is how you want to fill it?
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. So I think, I haven't been in the business for 20 years, but I have been in the corporate world. So I think, there's a couple of things and, events that I think kind of led me to becoming an entrepreneur. My husband's an entrepreneur, my son's an entrepreneur. I started out working for small, medium enterprises, and then I worked for a big corporate organization. And I mean, the real trigger event for me was I had a situation where, I was away on conference overseas, and my car got stolen, and I just paid up. I just paid up my car and got out of debt. And I went to our HR department and, to see if there was anywhere that I could give surety either on shares that was about to vest. And the answer was a blanket no, that we cannot do that. And it got me thinking, for people like me and women like me who get out of a debt and want to stay out of debt and work towards some sort of financial freedom, to start a side hustle or to have a business, what happens to you? And this is kind of what led me to being this passionate about it. I also saw it with my domestic worker. She was borrowing money without me knowing, religiously from a mashmanisa. And for women, either for individuals like us, me, who, want to get out of debt, stay out of debt and do something else with your life, or for someone who doesn't have access to any form of credit, where do they go to? And that's ultimately what got me started and becoming passionate about what it is that we do and getting into the financial services space.
Why the name Level Finance?
So it's a very interesting one because, when we started out, we started with what we refer to as earned wage access. And the name initially was called Get Advanced. What we found is that only giving on-demand pay and access to income, prior to payday, as an alternative to any form of credit, does not solve the problem. We saw that really, really early on in our journey. And we started pairing it with a whole lot of different products. So we started looking at, how can we help employees get out of debt? How can we help them build up some sort of savings and emergency fund? And also look at, reducing their spending and also focus on investments. And that's kind of why we changed from Get Advanced, which is an advance in your salary, which is earned wage access, to Level Finance.
I often hear South Africans say, when we hear the Minister of Finance or captains of industry in the banking sector saying, oh, we really need South Africans to save more. And on social media, you see South Africans just scoff at that, saying, save? Save what? There's nothing left to save because everything has become so expensive. What kind of response do you get from clients when you first sit down with them and try and map a way to what you call financial wellness?
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing, and it's a narrative that we see very, very, very often. I think that what we've seen is that a lot of employees, the COVID pandemic was one trigger event, but then, people either had to cut down in salaries, employers were doing it. Some people lost their job and they needed to reapply for their roles, and there was that gap and that void. So there's a lot of debt that's in the system, and we talk about more than 225 billion rand in unsecured lending itself. So when we talked about to savings, it's really about taking someone on a journey. The first thing we do is we look at how can we get you out of debt and not paying this high interest and all these additional fees. and then take you on a savings journey. So, I mean, people can do it in parallel. You can get out of debt and you can build that savings. But sometimes, like just having the savings, the amount of interest that you that incurs on your savings versus the amount of interest you're paying on debt really doesn't make sense. So we prioritize getting out of debt and then help building up savings. Yeah. And the reality is that not many people save after payday. And we found a unique sweet spot of getting people to save, as part of the earned wage access as well.
You spoke earlier about your experience as a woman and wanting to stay out of debt and the response that you got in trying to get out of certain situations. Do you find that as a CEO of a business such as yours, a female CEO as that your approach to your job as a CEO and your approach to dealing with especially female clientele is different because you've got that lived experience as a woman, both in the business and just as an ordinary South African trying to live a certain type of life financially?
Absolutely. I think, that we can see, there's so many gaps that females have. There's the income gap. And, there's access to financial services and how we are kind of almost excluded and don't have the same kind of access that men do. What we have seen, which is quite interesting, that women are a lot more solution orientated, looking at ways and somehow committing to that journey of getting out of debt and into a better financial space. And most of the women that we deal with that use our service are either the breadwinners and the caregivers, taking care of an extra parent, etc. So we do, and then that's the interesting thing is that I find that women are a lot more committed to that journey of financial wellness versus men. And so, the response we get, is very different, based on gender. But it also, it's a lot more fulfilling, knowing that we are able to save a breadwinner and help her get out of significant debt and building some savings.
People might be watching you right now, or women might be watching you right now, and you might have explained what you explained right now. They could be looking at their TV right now saying, she's talking to me. She's talking about me right now. Other than contacting Level Finance and seeing how you could assist them in a very real way, what is your first piece of advice that you would give somebody who finds himself in that situation? Because we're hearing, especially now, people are finding it very, very difficult to keep an eyebrow above water, let alone their heads above water.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of apps out there. It's just not a true source of data. I think that the most important thing is to be able to analyze your spending month on month and really keeping track of that. What we see that, a lot of people spend a lot more money spending and not being able to save or get out of debt. And then when there is that, sudden emergency, they go and they start borrowing from expensive credit. So I think, the first thing is really about setting a goal and feeling empowered, knowing that I have the ability to take control of my finances. I don't need anyone else. I have the resources available. And when we start putting in certain goals and behaviors and habits, like tracking our spending, looking at where we can source cheaper products, looking at bargains, etc., and kind of really living as frugal as you can for a period of time until you can start spending a little more because you're saving and you've gotten out of debt, is the most critical thing advice I could give to anyone. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for that. Raeesa Gabriel, some sober advice there on a Friday afternoon. She's the CEO and co-founder of financial wellness and salary-linked benefit platform called Level Finance. We thank her for her time this afternoon.